And so when I think about technology in relationship to design, it saddens me because I think we focus on the wrong thing. We focus on how is this going to affect my profession instead of how my profession affects the world.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Graphic Design is Fun podcast. My name's Dan. Today we are chatting with designer, artist, educator, documentary filmmaker, and activist, Sergio Toporek, aka Topo. Topo is an incredible guy. He was one of my teachers when I was studying design, and he had a really big impact on me. And I'm so glad that he took the time to chat with me for this podcast. So lately, Topo has been experimenting a lot with Midjourney, which is one of the many artificial intelligence-based image generators out there. If you've been living under a rock, these are programs where you give it a prompt of what you want, and it spits out a picture in 30 seconds. Really, really incredible, and also very, very terrifying. So that's sort of where I expected our conversation to go, chatting about the future of design, how the profession will evolve. And we did talk a bit about that, but Topo's view was more, yes, this stuff is interesting, and yes, a lot of things are going to change, but maybe there are more important problems, underlying problems in the field of design that are deeper than whether or not an image is created by a human or a robot. Problems that are maybe not being talked about enough. So this was a super thought-provoking conversation. You may agree with some of the things Topo says. You may disagree with some of it. But I think regardless, these are really important questions to be asking ourselves as designers. So strap in and please enjoy this conversation with Topo. Where do you see the future of graphic design going vis-a-vis AI and automation?
That's a great question. And I don't think anyone can say for sure. I think actually, I'm going to out myself that way, but I've never been a big fan of futurists. I read their books because I find them interesting. But sometimes I feel like even science fiction writers have been better futurists than futurists themselves. Like they are deeply embedded within the techno-utopian Silicon Valley kind of mentality, right? Where oh, this is amazing. But what worries me with automation and these kinds of new platforms is that, yes, it will give us a representation of what we're asking in a prompt. So what? What does that mean? We're going to have we're probably going to generate more images in the next years through this kind of software than there were than the images that were created probably in complete decades of human culture in other times. I have no idea exactly how that's going to advance. How is it going to affect authorship and even law, even like copyright law and ownership of artworks? I think we're definitely at the border of a new era. But yes, this is a new technology that's very interesting. But at the end of the day, it's also playing into a certain market logic, a certain capitalistic sort of, I don't want to get too political about design, but I think I have to, because in my opinion, that has been the problem with design for a very long time. And so when I think about technology in relationship to design, it saddens me because I think we focus on the wrong thing. We focus on how is this going to affect my profession instead of how my profession affects the world. And so we start to get concerned about losing our jobs as illustrators, or we start to be concerned about losing our job as typography designers or as UX interface designers. To be very honest, I think that design has not changed drastically since the time when it became mostly a tool for corporate power. Like I'm talking about the Mad Men advertising genius era that everyone has gotten used to it through the show that Mad Men show. And now we go like, okay, how could designers just work for Philip Morris and tell people that their throat was going to get sued because these cigarettes had menthol or whatever, sorry for the word, but whatever bullshit, they were trying to sell. And I think one day we're going to look back and say, okay, why are we mostly enabling surveillance capitalism right now? I mean, if design became a tool for the promotion of consumerism and of a certain lifestyle during the Cold War and after, I would say right now design is mostly a tool for surveillance capitalism, and I think it's as questionable or more questionable than our let's say our predecessors when it comes to the political, economic, social dimensions and magnitude of design. In a way, I don't care if something that that is already highly questionable morally and ethically gets automated. Like, I mean, it's probably better,
right?
At least. I mean, it's very likely, by the way, that it's going to get automated because we have rules, right? We have rules about, let's say, what color communicates a certain thing, what's a better position for a button in an interface, and well, when a machine can test this in real time with real people at a speed that none of us will ever be able to do, the logic won't matter. As designers, we used to get caught on the idea of like, oh yeah, because if it's on golden ratio or if it's on X in this corner, it won't matter. At the end of the day, the computer will say this, 1 pixel higher or 2 pixels lower, I got this result from the user test, and it won't even matter whether it makes sense or not. It's just showing it, doing A/B testing, over and over, showing it to millions of people. This is actually where it goes, and there will be no aesthetic debate about that, because who will care about aesthetics? At the end of the day, if design is just going to be completely utilitarian and completely just a tool to reach and to communicate as much as we can with as many people as we can, regardless of what it is that we're communicating or what are its effects, then I much rather have a machine doing that, because in a way I'll throw the towel, and leave the machines to figure that out.
Well, okay. Well, given that, for example, I was looking through some of your work, and I remember you showed us at VFS these images you made for QuickBooks with like a receipt that's a snake and the calculator that turns into a scorpion, and it's like these beautifully crafted images that are. I remember being blown away by, thinking, "Wow, this is awesome!" That
Thank you.
That a person made this. Would it not make you sad that images like that in the future, there would be no person behind it, or do you just kind of say, yeah, well, I mean, it was an advertisement for an accounting thing, so who cares? I got better things to do.
I think it would be the latter one. I think these days I feel like I have better things to do in a way.
Yeah.
Like those images, I think I agree with you. I mean, I like them a lot. I think it's a successful campaign, but at the end of the day, again, they are playing with emotional triggers, like with scaring people, right? Fear is a very, very powerful emotion. It's a very powerful motivator. And I'm not a judgmental person. Like, if someone wants to put their energy towards, gambling or porn or any endeavor that they want, that I'm fine with it. But I think that more and more, yes, I personally, I'm thinking, okay, I think whether I create this image for Intuit or a machine creates it, at this point, for me at least, is irrelevant, because I'm looking at this more like, why are we still using fear to get people to do something?
Right.
Why are we still using primal emotions, and not just primal emotions, because what we have right now is even more pernicious in the sense that it's not as obvious. It's very obvious with that image that I'm trying to use fear about, your taxes catching up to you, and getting you to buy a piece of software. But now that we're using machine learning not just to create images, but we're using machine learning mostly to turn the whole of society into processable information, right? And it's very opaque. It's a very opaque process. What I would like is that design does not continue to be a force that obscures meaning instead of showing it, right? And I think it's going to be more and more pernicious because that obfuscation is easier these days. And as designers, I think to be concerned about how we can make someone click more times on a button, but not be concerned about what clicking on that button does to us, to society, to our kids, to other people, is completely missing the point of what design should be doing. So today, for example, and I mean, you were with me in the VFS class, I probably said this before, but I do not want ever again to repeat the phrase that design solves problems.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I think design creates environments. Those environments can come with their own problems. So when we say design solves problems, okay, let's just all use the hottest models in the world. I'm talking back to, before, the woke movement and before so I'm talking the Mad Men era. Let's all just use hot women to sell absolutely everything. So yes, it solved the problem for that particular advertiser. It solved more stuff. But the environment we created became very, very difficult to navigate for people that were obese, that were not within the standards, that were, and we talk about that time, purely, that they were Black, for example, or that they were, within the heteronormative standards of that society. So I think that there's a reckoning in design of, are we actually going to step up to the plate? Are we going to be honest with what we do? Or are we going to continue to pat each other in the back and repeat bullshit that comes from other eras? Are we going to say, no, we don't always solve problems? Very often, actually, we try to solve a very specific problem for a very specific player, and we create environments that are just unnavigatable for certain people, or that are very, very hard to navigate for certain segments of society. And I think with that humility of saying, okay, we don't know. We don't actually know where this is going. It took many, many years for some of these ideologies to get entrenched socially. That's not going to be the case with artificial intelligence. There's one thing about artificial intelligence is that a misdirection, a misalignment, a bad instruction, let's put it that way, can very quickly get out of hand. And we're talking about people like the case with Google, people that, Black men being labeled as gorillas. That happened very quickly. And yes, they corrected it. And absolutely, I'm not saying that this was on purpose, Of course, Google was, but for example, there is a certain ideology in Silicon Valley about, break things and move fast.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not the greatest idea for design. Maybe we should actually take time, contemplate. And that's my fear about these platforms, that my fear is that the more that things get sped up, the more that I can get what I want very quickly, or very close to what I want very quickly, the less that I actually have to think about it, have to contemplate the situation, the more chances we have to create a bit of a monster, with these technologies that gets out of hand.
Yeah. See, these are the things that I feel like you did such a good job with when you were teaching, that when I was a student was very new to me, to sort of like, as designers, we do make an impact. And if we're not thinking about, sure, you're solving the problem of whatever it is, selling more Coca-Cola, but then you're obviously creating a problem of people drinking Coca-Cola, which is not good for them.
Yes.
And just to think critically is not talked about enough.
That's true.
I wonder though, how because you use Facebook, you said you had a Kindle, some of these things, and
Yes.
I'm obviously the same way. What's the inner battle of, should I use this platform because I think I can do more good than bad, or
Yes. Yes, I think that is a great question, because I wish I had a clear answer for that. I struggle, and I probably will die struggling with those issues. I think the value of struggling is that I mean, I prefer it's a bit depressing sometimes, and I understand the question. I mean, sometimes I do go like, wouldn't it be just better to use all this stuff, live a happy life,
Right.
and and not be concerned with all of these issues? But I think the value is that there's a difference between smoking, thinking that this is going to cure your throat because it has menthol, and smoking, knowing that the people that were elected to protect you have actually told you, hey, warning, this is going to kill you. Okay, yes, in both cases, I'm using it. I'm a big believer in being as truthful and as transparent and as honest in absolutely every aspect of life. And so compromises will always be there. I think that you cannot escape compromises. I would never want to be a politician, because I think I would just shoot myself. Everyone goes like, oh, why don't they just do this? Oh, Trudeau approved the pipeline or bought it from Kinder Morgan. And there's all these like very, people are very, very, let's say, absolute with their opinion. I think, stepping into the shoes of an elected official must be a very, very hard task, because compromises will have to be made. So I have no problem with accepting that there will have to be compromises. But I think that the knowledge that things can be better, you can tend towards an improvement, right? I don't think we're ever going to get there. And people go like, well, why don't you start your own, social network if you think you could do a better one? It's like, that's not my point. First of all, I don't think I can compete with any of these guys. But the thing is, having the ideal that things can be better, and you don't have to make it personal. You don't have to hate, the people behind it, because of course, who's going to act against their own benefit, right? Who's going to want to break something that they built from the ground up? But sometimes I think that a community that understands where they stand can push for that and can say, we live in the time where supposedly we are more engaged. And I think we've never been as disengaged as today, actually. We're supposed to, like, I get very exasperated when people tell me these technologies are democratizing photography, or democratizing education, or democratizing whatever, right? It's like people forget that democracy is not participation. Democracy is participation in governance. I mean, if it was just participation, you could argue that a feudal system was participatory. The feudal lord gave you a plot of land to work and then took most of it. You were participating, right? So I mean, participation to me has become an empty word, especially when participation has become almost inevitable. I mean, just as you could not refuse to participate in a feudal, unless you had a lot of power, you were just a worker and you were part of a feudal fiefdom, or whatever it's called, right? Like if you were part of, let's say, a feudal system, right? You had to work that land, and you had to give most of that to the feudal lord. So to me, when they say, oh, but it's participatory, yes, so what? So I'm posting stuff on Facebook, and how am I in any way having any say over the governance of this platform? If there's no, if the participation is not participation in governance, then it has absolutely it makes no difference whether 1 million or 1 billion people are participating, because then comes the point where, oh, billions of people are participating but have zero agency on this whole thing. The only thing we're doing is increasing the agency of those that are taking away our agency within that system. So how is that in any way democratizing? I mean, the whole democratization, movement of, when it comes to Silicon Valley and their rhetoric of democratization is patently false. You don't have to go too far. Like your account gets banned for some, AI made a mistake. You have no one to talk to.
Yeah.
In many ways, actually, these new platforms are less responsive, less democratic, less reactive when it comes to the important issues, when it comes to the issues of actually having a voice or not. It's like, we'll give you a voice. You're at Busters. We'll give you a voice, and then we'll just use the algorithm to ghost you.
Yeah.
I have no way of proving that. If the feudal lord came and whipped me, I would have a scar on my back and could say this is happening. But if you have been ghosted by an algorithm, these are protected by patent law, so you cannot get access to them. They will never actually, it's better protected than the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. So how exactly are we participating in governance within any of these Silicon Valley platforms in any meaningful way? And I think I wish those were the kinds of discussions we were having within the educational system, and not so much about how do we make people click on the button, more times. It's like, okay, yes, that is important, but shouldn't it be more important what that button is doing? Shouldn't it be more important who's behind it? Shouldn't it be more important who are we enabling? Shouldn't it be more important whether that is erasing rights, whether that is, all of these things that are so much part of our profession are just completely like, it's almost like annoying to certain teachers to talk about this. And I've noticed that within my own studies, is like people used to, if we go back to the feudal lord, they hated the feudal lord, and that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't have, you don't have to feed your family. What bothers me and what I find very pernicious is the rhetoric that we are your friends, and these companies are making, are democratizing transportation, are democratizing education, are democratizing whatever. Well, it's okay to say, you know what, this is the system we have, and I work for Uber, or I work for, I've done, work for in the past, work for companies that right now I wish I hadn't, but that's okay too. It's okay to say, yeah, I work for this or that company, and either try to change, and it's happening in a way, right? I mean, there's people within Facebook, there's people within Uber, there's people within certain companies that have taken it to themselves to become either whistleblowers or to try to change it from within. But I think that there's nothing wrong with operating within a system, and still, I actually think that is the only way you can have a healthy democracy. That's the only way you can have a healthy system, is by always being a little bit, if not a lot, critical of it, and seeing where it's failing and how you can improve upon it. A lot of people say there's nothing I can do. And the reason why I'm thankful to you, actually, that you invite me to have this conversation with you, is because this is what we can do. I mean, people don't realize, it's like, what can I do? I cannot change the industry. No, but you can talk about it.
Yeah.
You can have conversations. We can openly express these ideas without fear. Even if we become a pain in the ass, even if other instructors see us as nuances, even if other co-workers see us as nuances, it's like, have the conversation. What's the worst that can happen? Someone changes their mind a little bit. Someone hears something you say, and a year from now, they seem themselves affected, and they go like, oh, this is what Dan was telling me about a year ago. So is there something we can do in the sense of like going, completely against the current, or like saying, oh, I'm going to, hack Facebook and destroy it, or I'm going to, do some, let's say, out of the ordinary action? I think no. What we can do is say, there's a problem. There's nothing wrong with saying, this sort of inequalities, this sort of society that we've helped create, it wasn't with bad intention. I'm not saying this, saying all maybe if I was born in the 50s and I was starting an advertising agency, I would have done the exact same thing, because hindsight is 2020, right? Yeah. But I think what we can do is at least learn about these things and say, how can this compare? How can this, how is this similar, and how is it different as well, right? And what is the part of this technology that I want to keep, and what is the part that at least scares me? I'm a bit of as Tibor Kalman, great designer, called himself at some point a perverse optimist. I am a perverse optimist. I think, that within all this chaos, there's still a lot of magic. There's still a lot of like Mid Journey to me is still mind blowing. It's still something that I go, and it's addictive, and it's, but I'm already thinking, okay, how is this going to be monetized? Who is it going to benefit? How is it going to be used? The fact that I gave it a very abstract prompt, and it was solidarity. Every single thing that it gave me was something with the Ukrainian flag, which makes you think this is human. At the end of the day, this is going to some sort of pool of consciousness that exists out there, and you're saying, okay, what is the consensus of what is right now solidarity? Of course, if you go with something that is not so contextual, solidarity is very historically contextual, right? Solidarity would be solidarity, decades ago, it would have been about Poland and Lech Walesa. And probably that's what Midjourney would have given you. Right now, it's bringing back Ukrainian flags. That's human. That is not artificial. It didn't just pull it out of a hat, right? And so just even like when we talk about these things, saying, oh, artificial intelligence, wait a second. Yeah, it's a term we're going to use, but let's make it clear. This is not artificial. This is not intelligence. This is completely human. We have fed it previous human knowledge. We're feeding it human knowledge currently, and we are training it with our human choices as we're using it. So they wouldn't love anything more than to make people think that, yes, this is some sort of magic that it was created in Silicon Valley. Yes, there is a magical technological component to it, but it's not the whole story. And it's up to us to believe that it's the whole story or not, right? And say, if it's not the whole story, okay, so how are we going to shape it so that it reflects the whole story, so that I have some agency? The next Facebook that comes out, or the next, whatever Midjourney or DALL-E is going to turn into, or whatever, AI systems are going to turn into, how are we going to make sure they reflect the whole story and that they benefit everyone who's actually plowing the land in this feudal, digital environment?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for inviting me, Dan. It's always very nice to see faces that come back, and we have interesting conversations again. And I just love it that you're interested in all these topics.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Graphic Design is Fun podcast. If you want more Topo, he has a documentary called Beware of Images that he put out a few years ago. It's available for free online, and there is a link in the description of this episode if you want to check it out, as well as Topo's website. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to toss us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.